Welcome aboard, fellow space travelers and curious minds. I'm your lead science officer, and I am thrilled to have you with us for today's explainer. If you take a look out the main viewport, you'll see we're currently on approach to that stunning blue-green terrestrial marble known as Earth. Our mission today is a fun one. We are going to run a comprehensive planetary scan of this world's biological engines to see exactly how its ecosystems actually function. So let's fire up the scanners and dive right in.
Here is the mission briefing for our scan. Today, we're covering Earth's biological energy grid, planetary life support systems, cataloging the biosphere, factors controlling population size, and finally, system disruptions and solutions.
Initiating Phase 1, Earth's biological energy grid.
Right off the bat, our ship's sensors are picking up the primary energy receivers of this planet. We call these producers. And honestly, it's a brilliant system. These organisms don't even have to hunt or forage for food. Instead, they just capture solar energy directly from their local star, the sun, and literally make their own food through a chemical process called photosynthesis. They are the absolute bedrock of the entire energy grid down there.
Now, obviously not everything can just eat sunlight, right? That is where consumers come into play. Our biological feeds show that these organisms have to fuel themselves by eating other organisms, and we can categorize them into distinct tiers. You've got your primary consumers. Those are your herbivores and omnivores munching on the producers. Next up are the secondary consumers, the omnivores and carnivores eating the primary ones. And right at the top, tertiary consumers. These are essentially the apex carnivores hunting the secondary consumers. But what happens when things die? Well, our sensors are picking up a massively important recycling crew, the decomposers. Think of certain bacteria and fungi. When producers and consumers die, they don't just sit there piling up forever. Decomposers break down that dead organic matter into much simpler materials and nutrients. Our data feeds call this specific interaction saprophytism. Without these guys, the whole grid would literally choke on its own depleted organic waste.
So how does this energy actually move? Let's track a specific transfer in our food chain scan. Energy starts in a producer, say a cabbage. Boom! It transfers to a primary consumer, like a grasshopper, when it gets eaten. Then it transfers again to a secondary consumer, like a frog. But look closely at step 4. Energy is lost. As energy flows through this web, it's not a 100% efficient transfer. Organisms burn energy just moving around, breathing, losing heat. It's even lost as chemical energy through undigested food. Yeah, feces. The key takeaway? Energy strictly flows one way, and it is leaking out at every single stage.
Moving on to Phase 2, Planetary Life Support Systems.
Coming through on the direct satellite feed is the perfect biological engine of Earth, the interconnected carbon and oxygen cycle. It's completely mesmerizing to watch. Notice how carbon and oxygen are constantly trading places between the atmosphere, the plants, the animals, and those decomposers down in the soil. It's an endless self-sustaining loop.
Let's break that down just a bit more to really see how it works. In the oxygen cycle, green plants act as the main generators, pumping oxygen out into the atmosphere through photosynthesis. But flip over to the carbon cycle, and you see respiration by plants and animals, plus the decay of dead organisms by decomposers, actually consuming that oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide right back into the air. It's literally a planetary breath. Inhale, exhale.
And of course, we can't forget hydration. The third life support system is the water cycle. This is the incredible journey water takes from the land up to the sky and back again. Surface water heats up and goes through evaporation. It gathers way up in the atmosphere through condensation and eventually drops back down to the soil via precipitation. This cycle is absolutely crucial because it guarantees the producers get the water they need to keep the energy grid online.
Initiating Phase 3, Cataloging the Biosphere.
Let's zoom our scanners all the way in and define the foundational units of life down there. Our visual telemetry just locked onto a species. Let's use a dragonfly as an example. A species is simply a group of similar organisms that are capable of reproducing with each other. But when a bunch of those specific dragonflies live together in the exact same area, they form what is known as a population.
Now watch how this scales up. Say you've got several different populations. Maybe a population of dragonflies, a population of water snails, and a population of fish. When they all live together and interact, they form a community. In the physical, natural surroundings where this community actually lives, we call that their habitat.
Take a look at this microscopic scan of an enclosed pond habitat. You can see a community functioning in real time.
Various populations of fish are swimming right among populations of aquatic plants. And they aren't just politely sharing space, they have intense interactions. Some populations are locked in competition for limited food or territory. Others rely on symbiosis, forming really close relationships. That could be mutualism, where both benefit, commensalism, where only one benefits, or parasitism, where one literally harms the other just to survive. Nature is wild, right? All right, shifting to Phase 4, factors controlling population size.
Populations are definitely not static. They fluctuate constantly. The sensors have identified 4 main factors that dictate whether an Earth population will thrive or wildly decline. These are the outbreak of disease, the presence of predators, the availability of a food source, and sudden changes in weather. Let's dig into the evidence our surface scans have picked up.
Here is our first case study. This scan shows just how fast disease can decimate a population. When a disease like the avian flu strikes poultry rearing areas, the population plummets dramatically. And our data shows this happens to producers too. Look at the tobacco mosaic virus. It can sweep through and totally destroy tobacco crops in a flash.
Next, we observe predator dynamics. Check out this orbital feed from a savanna ecosystem. The population size of a living organism is directly influenced by the population size of its predator. Here, the presence of predators like lions keeps the zebra population perfectly in check. Interestingly, humans on Earth actually utilize this natural dynamic, called biological control. They use natural predators instead of toxic pesticides to manage pest populations in their crops. Pretty smart.
The third major factor is an absolute reliance on specific food sources. It's fascinating how specialized some consumers get. Take this organism, the panda. It is strictly tied to the availability of bamboo in its habitat. If that single food source is threatened or disappears, the panda population drops right along with it.
And finally, drastic weather changes. Our atmospheric sensors captured this severe drought. A sudden change in weather, like taking the precipitation right out of that water cycle we discussed earlier, immediately dries out the soil. That severely threatens the survival of any newly sprouting life, which in turn threatens the entire food web built on top of it.
Which brings us to our final phase, Phase 5, System Disruptions and Solutions.
The data we're looking at here presents a pretty stark contrast. On the left side, we can clearly observe that human activities, like burning fossil fuels for individual transport, are causing severe disruptions, overloading that delicate carbon cycle with excess carbon dioxide. However, on the right, our scanners also detect some really intelligent mitigation strategies. The dominant species is capable of planning ahead. They're developing and utilizing public transport, like monorails, to actively shrink their overall atmospheric footprint. We're seeing a very similar pattern with the water cycle. On one hand, unrestricted logging and huge domestic overconsumption of water resources are putting tremendous strain on the ecosystem. Yet the scanners are also picking up some incredibly clever, sustainable solutions being rolled out. Things like installing these rainwater collection tanks to store water for daily use, which takes a massive load off the natural grid.
So, as we prep our ship to pull out of orbit, this is the final thought I want to leave you with. From the tiny bit of energy captured by a single cabbage leaf to the massive, globally interconnected water, carbon, and oxygen cycles, Earth's systems are perfectly balanced, but they are incredibly sensitive. Every single thing relies on something else. So the ultimate question is, will its dominant species learn to protect the very cycles that keep them alive? It is fascinating data to ponder. Until our next planetary scan, keep learning and keep observing,